say he's a technical whiz. Some say he was born in Cornwall, while some say that he's on a journey. It's The Journey. And here's your host, David Hackett.
Hi everyone, another journey, and today we are talking to a 32-year-old author, transformational coach, as well as a financial advisor, retirement planner. And as a financial advisor, he's in the Times newspaper for one of the top advisors in 2021. He's currently ranked as the 16th top player in the UK for weight, and it says 73 kilos in Judo, which is huge, 73 kilograms in Judo, as well as being in the GB Master Squad Veterans. And he's also a member of Mensa, which means he's got the IQ in the top 2% of people. And it sounds like how I was in school when I read this bit. He was, however, expelled from a private school for poor behaviour. No, I wasn't expelled, I was suspended, but I know I was bad. He's also acquired qualifications, life coaching, psychology, and counselling. And I let him tell more about himself. I welcome our guest today, and I hope I get this right, Jeevan.
Jeevan. You can Jeevan. I've had it all, mate. I've had it all.
Okay. Welcome to The Journey.
Thank you, David. So really, you've introduced me fairly well there in respect of I've got a number of things going on. I'm an author, as I've said, or as you said rather. I've got a book out that is about becoming a person of value. So becoming your best self, because in order to become your best self, there's a number of things that you need to do. You need to be able to set goals. You need to be able to master your psychology. You need to be able to understand your mentality. You need to be able to be in the right place spiritually, etc. So that's what the book is essentially about. I also do transformational coaching off the back of that to help people ask themselves the right questions and put themselves in the right position moving forward. I'm a retirement planner, as you said, as well. So that's for people 55 and over predominantly, but we do deal with people younger than that in terms of investment.
So going to the very, very, very beginning, when you was in school, it said you was in school, but you got expelled for poor behaviour. Is that just because you just was one of those students who didn't adapt to schooling?
It's a difficult one, David, isn't it? Because it's very easy to look back at things from my point of view now, where I know a lot more about behaviour, about psychology, etc. But it's very difficult to understand my thought process at that point in time from that standpoint, doesn't it? Because the question of, well, why was I that way? Was it under stimulation? Was it that I didn't enjoy school? Was it that I just didn't have the right attitude? What was it? Was it a combination of those things? Was it one of those things, two of those things, or none of those things? So yeah, I went to I was in state school, so normal school. Excuse me. And I was naughty there even. I was thrown off the bus for throwing things out of the window. I had to actually go to school with the headmaster for a week. So I was missing my bus, going in earlier in and coming back later with the headmaster. Now, obviously, that's not a great position to be in. And obviously, because I was quite smart, my parents decided to see if I would get into private school. So on I went, did the exam, obviously got in, given my relative IQ. And 3 years later, I was thrown out for poor behaviour. Various things, really. And what I really came to realise a lot later on in life is that it's not just about your IQ, it's about how you apply yourself and the mentality and the goal setting and what direction you've got. So what I started to work on is the softer skills, as we've talked about, the aptitude, the mentality, etc., or attitude rather, and how to utilise that together in order to get the best results moving forward. Because what you don't want to be is a fish climbing a tree, or you don't want to be a tree that never fulfills its potential. So that's what I'm trying to do by having all of these avenues and working towards my future self.
Yes. So I assume, because I don't know, I understood from my point of view when I was in school that being picked on is because they looked at you differently, because they treated tended to treat people who were stronger or weaker differently. I feel bullies, and I feel like, as a way of coping, you was disruptive, and I feel that's why I was disruptive, because I was easily led by peer pressure, and even though I had a few friends, I didn't have any true friends.
I mean, I wasn't really bullied, so it wasn't necessarily that.
But the fact is, you with your example, it feels like adaptation was, you're not bullied, but the adaptation was there where you was struggling. That's how I pick it up. And
I just think it was a case of, again, if I'm looking back now, it's very difficult to understand at that position. I just found school wasn't interesting enough or stimulating enough, because it's just basic subjects. There's not anything that's abstract and, philosophy, psychology at that younger age that really would have got me interested.
Yeah, because
there were some subjects that, I was good at, and obviously, being that level of IQ, I still got good grades even without revision and stuff. But I don't think I was coached well at school. I'm more of a carrot person than a stick person. I need a carrot to chase rather than being hit by the stick. And I feel that, especially school back in, not that I'm that old, but it was a lot more stick than carrot.
Well, I remember leaving school 22 years ago, and it was a lot of sticks being poked in the way. So I understand how British education as a whole, it had its flaws, and like you said, it didn't have anything stimulating to keep people focused.
Very mundane, if you think of comparing school to real life. In school, you're not meant to cheat, you're not meant to work together. When actually in real life, you cheat, and I don't mean cheat by cheating on tests or cheating people. I mean that you can research information and use it. You also work together with people to get a common goal. But at school, they teach you not to liaise with each other, not to research stuff, because that's incorrect. When actually, I think that's a very bad way to teach kids, because in the real world, as I said, we need to work together. And if I was in charge of school, I would say, look, all the mock tests, work together. You ask each other what the question, and converse together, because we would learn better by actually discussing ideas and really imprinting that, rather than just reading something. I know obviously there's different types of way to learn: vision, auditory, and kinesthetic. Fine, but discussions, everyone learns. And for some people who weren't really as good at school, as I said, I was fine in that respect. It helps people to work together and work towards a common goal, which, as I said, is a skill that you use outside of school in real life.
And it's like when you do have your education now in school and in any country, the skills that you learn, I think America's got it, spot on, but because they got trade schools, but you haven't got anything in England or anywhere in the UK, and this is not me being derogative about how the system works in any way, because I know they got their own reasons for it, but the skills you learn, the basic skills, you don't need input into everyday jobs. Yes, you use.
Well, I think you do. I think that
you do, but then at the same time, there's a subject I did in school, and I was thinking, where does this come into a job if I wanted to be a train driver, for example? And it was a course called Design Technology Graphic Products. And I was thinking, how does a graphic product qualification get you to be a train driver?
Well, I think the reason that they have such a variety of topics is to give you a base level of understanding of how things operate. And also to see where you're going to excel. Because unless you do these things, for you, you want to be a train driver or whatever it's going to be. But for someone else who hadn't been exposed to graphic design or woodwork, and then they do that thing, and then they are actually exceptionally good at it, then that will allow them to become that later on. So I think school has its positives, of course, because I think, people say, where do I use maths? You use maths every day, whether you think about it or not. You use time management, you use maths in just basic, even if you're counting money, there's lots of ways that you use things. English, use it in emails, you use it in speaking. Yes, there's more niche areas that you probably don't, but it does help you, give you a basic understanding of how things operate. But I just think there is a hole in the education system that is massively lacking, that could help people become much better versions of themselves.
Yeah. So do you think there should be more ways of, and I'm not saying it will happen, we got colleges and universities, but do you think there should be a middle road where you can have like a trade school?
Well, they do that, don't they? Because it's apprenticeships.
Yeah. But they don't
That's-
call it, but it's not, do you think apprenticeship as a whole is a good thing? Do you think that it's got its flaws like normal education?
I think everything's got its pros and cons, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Apprenticeships are very good because you're learning on the job. You start very early, and you're learning the trade directly from someone who's been there and done it. Negatives are obviously you're not getting paid a huge deal, but you're learning skills that can help you longer term. So I think everything does have their positives and negatives. University's got positives and negatives. Everything does. And it's good to keep the positives, but also address the negatives. And I don't mean address them in terms of focus on them. It's more to do with improving upon something. So you find areas of improvement. Yeah. As with anything in life, don't look at yourself as weak or having issues. You look at areas that you can improve upon, because there's two types of weaknesses or areas of improvement. There are related and unrelated weaknesses. So if you're a tennis player, you've got a great serve, you've got a great forearm, and you've got a terrible backhand, but you're also very bad at maths. The backhand is a related weakness or related area of improvement, and the maths is irrelevant to your primary goal of being a tennis player. So we need to split out what is relevant and what is not relevant. So if you're a coach or a podcast host or whatever, you have communication skills, you have time management, you have networking. They are obviously relevant skills that need to be addressed and improved. But then there's stuff, as we said, physics, maybe physics isn't something that you need to really have a huge grasp on. But yeah, it's very specific and bespoke, depending on who you are and what you're trying to achieve, essentially.
And you go in your bio, what it says, you like to learn and you're constantly learning about interesting ideas and topics. So the ideas, you're always looking for new ideas, how to improve all the time, I assume, from that, because you said already that you like to think of new ideas. So these ideas you put into mind, and do you practice those ideas?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, not just ideas of how to improve that I look at. I enjoy pieces that are going to make me think critically. So whether that's philosophy, whether that is hermetic principles, whether that is spirituality, whether that is history, and questioning what in history is correct and what maybe isn't correct. So there's loads of stuff that, the pyramids, as an example, the pyramids that were built in Giza are incredible in terms of they've got the speed of sound, the speed of light, they've got the distance to the sun, the distance to the moon, the speed of light, speed of sound, true north, golden ratio, pi, and it's an 8-sided pyramid as well, and it maps out Orion's belt in the solar system. So that's very interesting to understand how that's created. And obviously, I think that history doesn't really account for how civilizations were able to create such a thing. Because obviously, if we think about cavemen and all this kind of stuff, and I'm not saying cavemen, that's never necessarily in line with that, but I think there's a hole in history as to where knowledge was. And, if you look back to Alexandria Library, etc., where is that information now? Is it in the Vatican? Has it been burnt? Is it hidden? But we don't know. But it's questions I enjoy thinking about things in that respect, deep questions and pondering over ideas, essentially.
And that is what I always say is what it like to be the 2% always like doing, is thinking all the time and questioning, not existence per se, but just questioning the unusual, what people would not automatically assume. And
Yeah.
I thought there's always things I've always questioned myself, like about the cosmos.
Yeah.
Now I've watched Carl Sagan's Cosmos, and I find what he says to be true, but then when you watch later series with other people, and I think Why are they talking about something completely different when Carl Sagan already said it like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, to have ideas, but science cannot be proved above its hypothesis. So, if you think, oh, everything science said I believe today, 50 years ago, someone else said that. And, some of those ideas were correct, some were incorrect. We thought that proton was the smallest sense of quark. We didn't understand about quantum physics with the double slits experiment, where when you observe something, it changes. They didn't know about particle entanglement. And now, from my standpoint, I believe that science proves there is a creator, because if you think about your phone in your pocket, is that randomly created, or is that something that's created naturally?
Yeah, exactly.
Or by design? It's design, isn't it? Because it has to be, because everything has a function. Same with the universe. There's planets, there's solar systems, there's nature, there's seasons, there is food chains, there is DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. There is structures within the body, circulatory system, digestive system, the brain. It all functions. There are chemicals. There are so many things that have specific, like even gravity is 9.81 Newton meters squared. All of these things are, science basically says, oh, this is 9.81 meters squared. That is a constant. If something's designed, it generally has constants, lots of constants that all work together, and that's exactly what Earth and the universe does. And scientists say it came from a Big Bang. Well, what created the Big Bang? First question. Second, it's ever expanding, the universe. Okay, what's it expanding into? Because there has to be something on the other side, doesn't it? If something's expanding into something, what's on the other side? These questions are not answered yet, and these are the things to think about, because we can design something. We can design a car. We can design a house. And we can design things that actually design things. CAD/CAM as an example, partially AI and stuff. It's the same thing. If we can do that, do we not think that someone created us can do something as complicated as that? I just think it's very naive for people to try and, yes, let's take religion out of it, because religion's a separate conversation altogether. But in terms of something that's created us as human beings and as civilizations, definitely there is something out there that has done. It's not necessarily in the vein of a white man in a beard, so to speak, in the clouds, but there is definitely something out there. And as I said, I think that it's very naive to believe that there is something otherwise. But I think the reason that people think that is because they correlate religion with that. So they'll be like, well, we don't believe in parts of religion, which means that whole creative shit's bullshit. Well, actually, you can separate those out and say, well, yes, let's say you don't agree with the stories of Moses and Jesus and other religions as well, but obviously they're the main three religions, aren't they? Yeah. Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. They are the Abrahamic religions. And actually, interesting point is that they are all really the same religion. They believe in the same story, but with different parts. So Judaism is up to Jesus, isn't it? Really. Then Christianity believe that part, but with Jesus as well. And then Islam, they believe Jesus existed as well, but then Muhammad came along. So it's the same story, but they believe different parts. So yeah, that means to me that, or says to me that, yeah, if we take away your understanding of a story or the story and look at the facts and fundamentals, there is an agreement with all religions pretty much that there is something, a higher power there that knows right from wrong. And we inherently know that as well, because we have got instinct and we pick up on things around us, and that is that instinct. Is that us being told? We don't know. We can't prove that necessarily.
Yeah. So going into modern times, like into now and how we see things now, do you think it's getting better with the understanding, or do you think it's still that because of the way we was as children? Do you think it's still stagnant?
It's getting better and it's getting worse at the same time, if that makes sense. I think some things are getting better, like technology, but I also think that as a collective, our closeness to nature, etc., is going backwards. We're on our phones. We don't really socialize as we used to. If you see concerts now, instead of everyone really enjoying themselves, everyone's got their phone up and you see lights everywhere. So we're getting out of contact really with what's really important. So yeah, I would say that there are positives and negatives to where things are going. But yeah, I think there are probably equal positives and negatives, if I'm honest, but they are very big in either camp.
Yeah, because I remember back in the day, and you probably seen it as well on videos as well. But one time when you was at concerts, it used to be lighters out in the sky
Yeah,
if it was a concert.
yeah,
Now you see the lights of the cameras on the phones. It's like
yeah.
we're not taking pictures, and I'm thinking it doesn't give the same push and same feeling as if you're holding the lighter up.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily just the comparison of the light and the light. It's saying that instead of being there in the moment and enjoying the moment with people around you, you are recording it to show people at the other side of the world how much fun you're having when you're actually not having that much fun because you're looking at your phone. You're watching the same guy on your screen that you could be watching in front of you
Yeah,
when he's
and
right
it's
there.
and it's a snapshot of people just saying, "Look." So, and I'm not condoning social media because I use social media as well as you do, but it's just showing people like this is my life and this is what I want you to read about my life. It's no longer writing it in a diary, for example. It's writing it on Facebook or writing it on Twitter or Snapchat. Now, don't get me wrong, you get to meet many friends and connect with many friends through these mediums, but I just feel like what happened to the old traditional way of, and I've always said it, what happened to the day where you used to have face-to-face contact?
But as per the law of gender in spirituality or law of duality, whatever you want to say, there's equal and opposites, yin yang. So for every positive there is on social media, keeping in touch with friends, sharing information, speaking with people on the other side of the world, a whim, you can call them, you can Facebook them, you can Snapchat, Instagram, WhatsApp, whatever you want. For all those positives, there are negatives as well. There has to be. Nothing is just positive and nothing is just negative.
Yeah.
And from those, people have pride. People try and show their best life, and actually they're not happy inside. People have got jealousy because of it. People have lust. They have envy and all these sorts of things. That how can we minimize the risks of that and still get the benefits of social media? Because you can't just get rid of something for the negative just because of a negative necessarily, because otherwise you get rid of cars because of an accident. Yeah, you have to look at the positive versus negatives and say, well, how can we reduce the negatives while keeping as much of the positive as possible? And I think that's obviously how humans develop, because keeping the example of the car, we invented seatbelts and we invented airbags and we invented other parts of the frame of the car, the chassis, that keep you safe. And essentially that's to try and minimize any fatalities, but also keep the transport essentially.
So going to the future, would you say better, worse, the same, or getting better understanding?
In what sense?
Just how life is progressing. Do you think we're progressing towards that better goal of understanding where we were like 20 years ago?
Well, I think it's down to individuals, because individuals pass on information and share information, like your podcast or other podcasts. People have ideas, they prove the ideas, and they share the information. So we need to take it upon ourselves individually. So yourself, David, me, other people, to improve things for everyone else to enjoy. Yeah, because it's not a case of, how's society going to work? If you take it upon your own back, or other people do, then society will inevitably get better. But as I said, I think there are going to be positives and negatives moving forward. Technology will improve. That's going to maybe take some jobs away, but then that gives you more free time, I suppose, etc. to do other things that you enjoy. But then there are other disadvantages, identity. People don't know what they are, male, female. They don't know what their interests are. They don't know where they stand. So I think there are a lot of things that could improve, but it's a case of tackling the hurdle when you get there, isn't it? You can't always foresee what's going to happen. We didn't foresee COVID, happening, and we adapt off the back of that. Hence why we're doing obviously virtual stuff, because before then there was a lot less virtual stuff. There was still a lot of stuff, but not as much as maybe there was or there is since COVID, the pandemic.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And the pandemic, I know for a fact, it brought people closer together because that's the only way of being physically close. Like, because I remember when I did radio shows, you used to go up to people and interview them. Now you got to do it either through mediums like Zoom or whatever. So I do understand that things had to adapt quickly for, when COVID was at its highest point, and even though it's dying down, and I'm not saying it's completely gone because it's still there, it still exists. I just believe people rely on Zoom more so to do things than they have done, or they don't really do major meeting face to face. So virtual things like this does help.
Yeah, I think as you said, or as we both said, essentially, that social media has its benefits because this is still a form of social media.
And it will be shared on various social medias like YouTube and everywhere later. But
this is it. So there are benefits to that, but again, how can we keep the benefits and reduce any negatives, over dependence? And that's down to individuals as well. Society can't be responsible for everything. We have to take it upon ourselves for things, because let's say for alcohol and cigarettes, everyone knows they're bad for you. Society does what it can to tell people, but it's down to you to actually take that on board. So for me, I think it's a case of, you mentioned the future there. We need to individually and collectively visualize a future that we want to work towards and then actively make that happen. Because otherwise it's a case of aiming for New York or not aiming for New York and ending up in Timbuktu. If you aim for New York, you get to New York. So as an individual, I've got my aims in terms of business, in terms of personal life, in terms of judo, etc. And the same should go for the world as well. The only issue I've got with that is that a lot of the time the world is getting pushed in a direction we the people don't want, because of the elites and Davos and the World Economic Forum and certain families that are pushing the world in a direction that we don't necessarily want. But again, we have say in that by pushback, and that's exactly what's going to happen at some point.
So to conclude, what would you say to people watching, listening now for the future, as well as now? What would you want to say to them?
Well, just keep visualizing your future. Work out what it is you want and work towards that. Don't think about what you don't want. Think about what you actually do want and work towards that. Instead of I don't want to be single, think of I want a relationship, and then you can act on the back of that. Because life, although it's probably not going as well as you want it to, think about 5 years ago. Where were you 5 years ago? Maybe 5 years ago, you wanted to have the job you've got now. Maybe you wanted the relationship you're in now. Maybe you wanted the kids that you've got. Maybe you wanted to start this podcast or be a guest on a podcast that you didn't do 5 years ago. So have gratitude for what's come before, and have faith of where you're going to be in the future, and work to with that to ensure that you are giving something back to the world and yourself.
Wow, that's great, and thank you for sharing your journey with us today. And
Thank you, David.
Let's hope people will grasp the understanding and understand where you come from with your views, and understand that not everything's black and white. There is color elements into. That's how I describe it, because I know it's very black and white how people tend to think, and most generations like to think black and white, but it's not black and white. There is hope.
Exactly.
And there is success for them if they put their mind to it in the nicest way. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was The Journey, hosted by Wise Words Imaging, hosted by David Hackett. Be sure to like, subscribe and listen to another journey coming soon.